Coming up on the Men at the Movies podcast, we visit the Wild West with Young Guns 1 and 2. This movie appeals to us because we all want to have a group of pals who pursue adventure and purpose together, who fight for freedom and justice. However, without a control line to guide us, we can easily lose our pals and die alone. We're going to the spirit world and discovering God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being. Regulators, mount up. This is Paul McDonald, and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. Joining me here live in the studio for the first time in our new renovated studio, I think, is Matt Gleaves. Hey, Matt, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Paul. It's a very lush environment.
Lush? There's no moss hanging off the walls, no water dripping off the ceilings.
We got soundboard up, but I didn't know what to say. First thing that came to mind. Sorry. Long-time listener, second-time caller.
Yeah, that's right. We had you on. We did Ready Player One a little bit ago.
Yeah, 2021.
It's we've been around a little while now. We're moving up on our third anniversary, fourth anniversary. First anniversary, we did Shawshank. Second, we did Pinocchio. Now we did Lebowski.
Yeah.
So it might be the fourth.
Yeah, this is...
So we're moving up on our fourth anniversary.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, coming up in about 6 months from now.
Yeah, I love the podcast. It's an easy push to share it with people, especially people who are movie people. It really is. It's an easy conversation to have. And then, like, even when you go back and you look at the conversation, like, oh, I never thought about it from that perspective. Like when you and Britt did Halloween. I'm not a horror guy.
Ding, 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 ding,
oh,
ding,
yeah,
ding.
no. There's too much of that
There's too many
real.
heebie-jeebies.
Well, there's too much of that just is just too real.
Yeah.
And so, but the fact that the perspective that you guys put on that, it was so good. And so there are just those things where to look at these movies and stories that we love that are gateways. It's fun. And then the whole Band of Brothers thing you guys just did.
Yeah, it was fun.
You guys are jerks. I'm sitting there driving down the road crying. I love my brothers.
And so Matt, you may have been the first, if not, you were at least one of the first, if not the first Patreons to support the show financially. So, you and Sarah, JB and Rob, Philip Martin, who you'll be seeing this weekend, and my brother Mike, they're the vanguard of the patrons who financially support the show. If you're interested, if you love the show, you want to be a part of it, we do occasional live streams. You get gifts randomly as sort of that comes across the table.
That one gift, I wasn't sure what to do with it, Paul, so I just put it on the shelf.
What gift was that you didn't know what to do with it?
Making it up.
These guys, I turn out handmade, heartfelt gifts, and you just throw it on a shelf and forget about it.
That wasn't the gift I was talking about. That gift is in a place of honor in my house. So, no, I just make it up the second gift, but it's good. It's just, in all honesty, man, it is a gift to just be able to come down and hang out with you.
Yeah, man.
This has been so fun. And then hanging out with your grandson.
Oh, yeah.
He is hilarious.
Yeah, he took to you right away, calling you Uncle Matt.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. I'm a family guy, and I love my kids, all three of them. That range from my oldest, who's Mitch, and he's 24, to my youngest named Oliver, who's 4.
Yeah,
which means I'm never going to retire.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what is retirement? We talked about that yesterday. It's just,
and you got a daughter thrown there in the middle.
I do.
She's closer to Oliver, obviously, than Mitch.
Yeah, she will be 8 this summer, and she reminds all the time, I'm almost 8. I can do things without eye contact, which means supervision. Eye contact means supervision. So I can do things without. And so, and she'll say, Dad, you're the best dad in the world. I'm like, you're my favorite daughter.
Yeah.
She's my only daughter, but she's my favorite.
That's all that matters.
Oh, yeah. And then you start looking at this little bitty girl that I have no, like, who thinks I am the world, and I have no clue how she thinks. And
treasure these times.
Oh, yeah.
Because in somewhere between 5 to 10 years, that will shift.
Yeah, well.
Probably closer to 5 years.
Yeah. So I've been taking her.
I hate you. You're trying to ruin my life.
No, I'm trying to save your life. He's no good for you.
No man is.
Yeah. Dad, would you quit cleaning your shotgun when he comes over? No. Okay, I will.
You're going to have to buy a shotgun.
Pistol. Yeah, I don't have a shotgun. Yeah, it's just so good. So when I have other kids call me uncle, I love it. You know, I grew up in a big family and 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and just love it. And I've got a great wife. She's fantastic. She's puts up with me, which is a huge win for me.
She's nominated for sainthood just because she's with
twice.
you.
She's been nominated twice for sainthood. Probably more than that. But no, man, just hanging out with you and your family, it's always fun. Talking about spiritual warfare, which surprised us last night. That was really had a great.
There's a reason Matt doesn't like the horror movies, like we said, just because it is strikes a little too close to home for the reality of the world that we live in and that he's able to kind of get in touch with from time to time.
Yeah, and whether I want to or not. And there's as my buddy Chad says, it's the veil is very thin.
Yeah, and so that feels like a good segue to this movie.
Hey, Chavis, how come they ain't killing us? We're in the spirit world, asshole. They can't see us.
For Matt, the veil for the spirit world is thin.
Oh, that's so good. So what's great is, so I was on the way down to driving down North Carolina to hang out with Paul, and I was having a conversation with Mitch Davis from Mission Uprising, and we were talking about a lot that's going on in my life and his life, and I brought up Young Guns. I said, this is, so when I was 17 years old, me and my buddies, Danny Johnson, Jeff Kozort, we went to the movie theaters and saw Young Guns live in the theaters. And yes, last year was the 35th anniversary of Young Guns.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. But there's a part in the movie, like years later, when I was 19, I spent 6 weeks in Israel on an archaeological dig in 1990, and then went from this archaeological dig on the borders of Lebanon, on the Golan Heights, to Hyco, Texas, population 1,000.
As one does.
Yes, and ended up with, I didn't realize I had PTSD, because you hear when you're on the border of the DMZ, even 34 years ago, there was machine gun fire every night. That whole area is at war. I always felt very protected. Those are another stories for another time, because I haven't always made the best decisions, especially when I'm 19 years old and I didn't travel 10,000 miles away not to see it.
Yeah.
So made some poor decisions on that. Great stories, poor decisions. That's usually how it works, right?
Right.
But when I was in Hyco, Texas, I got to be a youth minister. And that summer was when Young Guns 2 came out. And in Hyco, Texas, there is a museum, just a small shack of a museum, to Billy the Kid, alias Billy Brushy Roberts, or Billy Brushy Roberts, alias Billy the Kid. And they were telling me about this. I'm like, that's amazing. And we took some youth group to go see it. Probably wasn't the best decision, but we went and saw the movie. And at the end of the movie, it says Billy Brushy Roberts died in Hyco, Texas. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, Hyco, Texas.
Because everybody in the town showed up to watch the movie.
There's probably 7 of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a pretty full crowd. No, but it was a lot of fun and really great. But there was this old woman at the church I was working at. And she's like, I knew Billy Brushy Roberts when I was a little girl. He wasn't Billy the Kid. He couldn't even ride a horse or shoot a gun. And I'm like, oh, no, ma'am, that means he was Billy the Kid. And she looked at me like I was like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, because if I was a notorious outlaw that had killed people and didn't want to be caught, I would say I wasn't him. I would say I didn't know how to ride a horse or shoot a gun. Yeah, ma'am, that means he's totally Billy the Kid. And then I was talking to Mitch about this. I'm like, that's the devil. The devil is, I don't exist. It's made up in your mind. And so immediately I talked to text because I was driving. I did not text, but I talked to text. Just Paul, Young Guns. This is one you need to put in the queue.
You didn't do anything. It was just Young Guns.
Right. That's all I did was say Young Guns and send it to Paul.
Yep.
And Paul called me about half an hour later.
Like, what do you want me to do with this? You just randomly, and actually you do randomly text me movie titles.
I do, because you have so many good guests that come on here. Like I can't even pick a favorite.
Yeah.
Because even movies that I'm not really, I've never watched before, hearing the perspective of them and what makes their heart come alive, I love it, because you can go back and look at those movies, and they're still making good movies, and there's been good movies.
Yeah. There's no shortage. People will say, oh, have you done this one, or is this one on your list? And it's like, likely it's on our list because it probably started at 200 and is now up to 500.
Yeah. And of those 500, 100 of them are Britt's top 10.
And from the 80s.
So we were talking, I've never met Britt. Britt, you sound like John Malkovich. But we were talking about this. I'm like, oh man, this is so many elements that Britt would like. And
yeah, he's going to be so mad that I did this one. I remember watching this back when I was in high school, and we're actually going to talk about both movies today. Cause like you said, I called you, I was like, why did you text this to me? And, I was like, well, why don't we watch them? But our plan was see which one we like more, and then do that one. And weirdly, like when I went back and we did Rocky, I found that most of my Rocky quote unquote memories were from actually Rocky 2.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but like my brain had merged them together. This one, it was much different. A lot of the lines that we take and use and still use today.
He ain't all there, is he?
He ain't all there, is he? are from the first one.
He's there enough.
He ain't all there. No, that's what I say about you all the time. That Matt, he ain't all there, is he? So Matt, when you look back to going into the theater, watching the movie with your buddies back then, and walking out, think of like the feeling that you had walking out of the movies. How would you sort of umbrella statement overall, like, how would you describe that feeling and what 17-year-old Matt was experiencing in that moment?
Man, the fact that my buddy Danny, we all quoted the movie for like ever after that.
Still do.
We still do. And, but he loved, my buddy Danny Johnston loved Dirty Steve. And then we kept trying to identify.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah, Steve.
What?
And then, Kozor, I remember one night Danny had some dip and Kozor. Let me try that.
Oof.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't go and try it. He turned green. It was just those type of things.
Did he try to put as much in his mouth as Dirty Steve put like the whole can of dip in his mouth every time,
and then puts more in on top of it. Yeah, no, but it's
constantly spitting throughout the movie.
Yeah. So, but no, it became very, very much of a, in the line in the movie, there's this idea of pals. We're pals, and we're all misfits, and we're all different, and we're all looked out. I mean, of them, Danny and Jeff were really cool. I was nowhere near cool. I played the tuba in high school, and I wanted to be a minister and preach. There's nothing about that that's cool.
That doesn't put you in the that doesn't win you the homecoming king crown.
No, I was not even nominated, which is shocking. I know, but
there was like 5 dudes, and you're no, I don't know.
No, I went to a large high school in Richardson, Texas, and it was out of a class of 848. I was number 484. I mean, it's literally I was in the middle of the pack.
If you look at the bell curve, you're the thing that's holding the bell up. That's how centered you are.
Yeah, we'll go with that. But it was just one of those ones where you start like, who did I identify with? Like, I like knives, so Chavez was the one that popped up. What was interesting was when we went back and watched this, I still found myself identifying with Chavez for different reasons, and then like we had another guy, his name is Jerry Barker. He's now a doctor and amazing man doing amazing things. All these guys are great. And we always called him Doc for obvious reasons. He wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was just those things, but we never gave each other a nickname. But in our hearts, especially in my heart, we were pals. And, you know, I have this thing when I make friends for life. And I think about people and I pray for them and I send them random texts, Young Guns, you know, because
the clip from Brokeback Mountain.
No,
I
would
just
never
can't
do that.
quit you.
I would never do that. I've never seen the movie, by the way, but the clips are funny, especially the GIFs. They are a gift.
Yeah.
But what about you? Because you were quoting the movie too when I was coming down on the phone.
Yeah, and when I look back, like that's what I remember is in high school, especially Young Guns 2 with Bon Jovi's "Blaze of Glory,"
Going down in a blaze of glory. Well,
I think the music on 2 is so much better than 1. What was it? Emilio Estevez called it like a heavy metal western, or something like that. But from a story and sort of being memorable, I think the original was better.
Yes, I would agree.
Even though there were a couple lines from the second one that stick out.
Yoo-hoo! I'll make you famous.
So we're going to talk mostly about the first one because of that idea of pals. And I think that's what resonates.
Yes.
That idea of pals, especially in the beginning. You've got Doc and Tunstall's in the town, and then they see Billy, played by Emilio Estevez. He's running, and Tunstall has a soft spot in his heart for runaways, for outcasts, for misfits, for guys who don't fit in. Yeah. Shout out to Britt and his love of misfits. And especially for young men in their late teens, early 20s, who are looking for their place in the world, that resonates. And there's like, oh, there's this guy who sees the potential. He sees the good in them. He knows, and he's going to take them in. He trains, Chavez is good with knives, and Charlie is a pugilist. I don't expect you'd know what that means.
Would you, hog boy?
And so for a young man to have somebody who believes in him and then watch that man get shot would be devastating.
Yes.
To lose the mentor, to lose the father figure, and to see them stand up for justice.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. It's like, yes, that's what I want to be like that.
Yeah.
When we watch Braveheart, I want to be a man who stands up for freedom and what he believes in and for others, and who doesn't want to, I don't want to die like that, but who doesn't want to die for a purpose and have a cause and a legacy to his life like William Wallace did?
Yes.
You yearn for that. And there's something about yearning for sitting around with your buddies, whether it's in some weird river hot tub that you see Doc and...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was weird. Doc and Dirty Steve in a hot spring water.
Yeah.
And they're talking like it's completely natural.
Or, sitting around the fire, being out in the outback, or not the outback, but, out in Texas and New Mexico and out in the West.
Right.
There's a lot that gets glorified and glossed over because it's also probably a pretty miserable lifestyle. Camping's fun for a few days.
Yeah, when you have a tent and a generator and McDonald's down the street.
And so you see that. And I think back in the day, Billy was more of an icon than he is for us now. Like, I remember we looked at it, like, this dude's insane.
Yeah.
Like, he's probably a psychopath. The way he delights, like, in killing. And he's like, no, I'm just going to kill him. He doesn't really even care after Doc dies. Or at least he doesn't show it. Because he goes and he gets captured and he's making jokes and all this stuff.
But I think at that point in Young Guns 2, he was caught up in his own idea of what he wanted to be, because there were books written about him. There were, stories written about him. Doc says in the second movie that he's now a teacher up in New York, and kids are walking around the streets pretending to be Billy the Kid. He was becoming larger than life, and in the movie, he was beginning to believe it. So it's
And again, for a young man,
yes,
that appeals.
yeah,
You want to be larger than life. You want to be known when you walk down the street. You want people to come up to get your autograph or to be like, oh, that's Billy the Kid. He's famous.
yeah,
He's got what bounty was high enough for Billy?
yeah.
Like, oh, it's 1,000. The poster says 500. No, it's 1,000. Or even early on, he asked Doc, that's what, 25 men that he's killed? And Doc's like, I think it's 5, Billy. We'll call it 10.
Yeah. And then what's later on, when he's being accused of all these murders, he calls Doc and his pals out saying, I remember you shooting those men that I'm being blamed for.
Yeah.
So there's very much of it's Billy-centric style.
He's definitely a narcissist.
Yeah.
The world revolves around him. And if he doesn't, it will make it.
Right. So by the second one, that's the second movie, that was what we felt like it was more focused on. But the first one, he literally had a mission. And he was calling his pals, the regulators, into this mission that would have enough grit to finish the job.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it's awesome that we're talking about this right before The Outpost, because in this moment, The Outpost, we talk about the three things: that every man has an adventure to live, a battle to fight, and a beauty to pursue.
Yeah.
And we're watching this movie, like all three elements are in this movie.
Right. And as men with a few decades under our belts.
Thank you for that.
And pounds over the belts.
The Dunlap disease.
The spare tire.
Yeah, my belly Dunlapped over my belt.
We can look back and see, we can say, oh, this is why it resonates. And those three themes come from John Eldredge's Wild at Heart book that he wrote back in late 90s, early 2000s. I think it came out in 2001.
Yep.
And to me, the story of Billy, it's very similar to how Breaking Bad goes. Walter White starts with a very good desire of providing for his family after he dies of cancer. But along the way, he sort of, the 1 degree shifts he takes all end up being sort of downward. And he ends up being, again, a narcissist. I am the one who knocks. It's all about him and being the one, I'm the one who created the crystal blue. And he wanted to be the kingpin. It became less about his family and all about who he was and how people looked at him.
But that's a great perspective, because it is not, Billy the Kid, Mr. White, all these people and these characters didn't, Matt Gleaves, Paul McDonald, we didn't just wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm going to do this sin, or I'm going to get involved with this. There were all these little 1 degree shifts in perspectives that led us to those decisions. And then afterwards, we're like, oh my goodness, what have I done? What have I become?
Yeah. You wake up that one morning and you sort of say that.
Yeah. And so the other thing I thought was interesting was a lot of voices in this. I asked Paul, who do you feel like you resonate with?
It would probably be Doc, which is also interesting because he's probably my least favorite character.
But he's the voice of reason.
The sort of the moral compass.
Yeah.
And also sort of soft-hearted, because he's a poet, right?
Yeah.
And
you're a warrior poet.
They fought like warrior poets. And so this idea, we're now past episode 180 of the Men at the Movies podcast.
So good.
And I brought this up with Conrad and Peanut Butter Falcon about these ideas, the ideas of the 1 degree shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so funny because I said, I didn't know exactly when that episode would come out, but we talked about, if each one of these conversations creates this 1 degree shift in me over the course of 180 episodes, that's a 180 degree shift.
Whoa, that's so good.
So it was so funny when I was sort of scheduling them out. I had a batch of them and I was like, holy crap, Peanut Butter Falcon's going to be on episode 180.
That's so good.
But, and so that's what we see is these pals sort of, they go and they want to do something to avenge their lost father figure.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the power of the law behind them. We see Dick, Charlie Sheen. He goes out and he wants to be by the book. He wants to be the law. He wants to do things. We're going to arrest them. Billy keeps killing them.
Yep.
With delight, with that hyena laugh of his.
Yeah.
And he shows no remorse because he's justified it in his own mind.
Well, he's got a mission.
Yeah.
He's got a job that he's doing because the one man who helped elevate him from a pig pit, a pig pen with a bunch of crap in it, to brand new hat, brand new uniform, or not hat, brand new suit, brand new guns, brand new identity. That identity was stolen from him because they killed his father figure.
Yeah. He's the man who saw something more than everybody else did.
And even in Young Guns 2, when he and Doc get into it, he says, Doc, do you remember John Tinsdale? I mean, he just calls him back to, remember what happened to him? He's still on mission.
Yeah.
And yet the mission has changed. Everything's different. But he can't see past that.
Right. And really, that's these movies, as funny and enjoyable as they are tragedies.
Yes.
Because they show what happened if you don't change.
Yes.
Sort of the result of following your own hubris.
Yeah. To where the end of his life, when he said, hey, we've got pals, at the end of his life, when he's an old man in Hyco, Texas, which is awesome, he's by himself.
Yeah.
Everybody's gone. It's just him. And he's dying, and he wants to be pardoned, and he wants to be forgiven, which is what we all want to do.
Right.
On our deathbed, we want to be forgiven of all the terrible things we've done, all the wrongs that we've made.
Those are sort of the big ideas, the stuff that's like, yeah, we love this. And as we watched through both movies yesterday, there was a couple scenes in the movie that stood out as really meaningful of why does it resonate so deeply with us? And you hit it on the head, Matt, of what John Eldredge said about the themes that God placed on a man's heart of beauty to rescue, battle to fight, and adventure to live. And what greater adventure than you have than living out in the Old West?
Oh, yeah. With guns.
Yeah.
And you're riding horses.
Taking some hallucinogenic mushrooms found by Chavez there.
Did you guys see the size of that chicken? Hey, dog, did you see the size of that chicken?
Oh, man. I just remember laughing so hard, and we would say, hey, guys.
Did you see the size of that chicken?
Yeah, it's so funny.
And so while those are good lines, there's also something deeper. And that's where we're going to dig into a little bit. One is this idea to stand up for justice.
Mm.
Like that was their main motivation, even though, especially in Billy's case, it kind of got distorted and used for his own purposes. And that's what, again, we see if as a young man, because these are young guns, they're young'uns. If you're not settled, if you don't have a good foundation, it is easy to get pulled aside and to be like, oh, well, that's not it, to rationalize the murders and the killings and the actions and the behaviors. As you said, to wake up, you don't just wake up one morning in jail because of something you did yesterday.
Correct.
You don't wake up some morning 350 pounds because you ate a whole pizza yesterday. Like that, those things, there's a development, there's a sort of a negative growth to that, even when the heart and the desire is good. So it's we talk a lot about this idea of the self-life, the poser. What is motivating our behavior?
Mm.
And I think one of the reasons I associate Doc is because he is passionate about stuff.
Yeah.
and he cares about stuff. And, he finds out about Young, who's the Chinese girl there, and he dances with her and he falls in love from one dance, whatever.
I mean, it was an amazing two-step.
Yeah, apparently she was a fantastic dancer. Didn't talk a lot, but he finds out that the guy Murphy, like the laundry owned by this Chinese family, messed up a shirt, and so in compensation, he took their daughter forcibly.
Yeah, which makes sense,
as one does.
Yeah. You messed up my shirt. Give me your child.
Yeah, that sounds like fair compensation, right?
Yeah.
So again, painting Murphy as this guy who takes and takes and takes and takes and just goes after it. So he's a guy you do want to fight against. But we see what motivates Doc so much in the scene sort of midway through the movie when he tries to give her he calls them flowers. It looked like hay.
Yeah, it looked like an eighth of a tumbleweed.
I guess that it was dry season out west then. But he sees Young walking down the street, and he goes there and talks to her, and she's like, "I shouldn't be talking to you." And she keeps walking, and he just finally yells, "Stop," because he has something really important to say to her, which I think as men is really important message for us to communicate to the women in our lives.
Look, if you don't want to take these, that's fine. But you take a message to your guardian. You tell LG Murphy, the regulators are gonna clean house. And I mean clean house. That they can't own us like they own a little China girl for the price of a shirt. Okay? You tell him that.
And even when he's high on the peyote, he's talking about
she's my flower.
Oh, I'm her butterfly.
Yeah.
There's I don't know why.
No. And she's my flower. Yeah, it's such a great scene. I mean, to me, when I was a kid, because this was like right around the time that Lost Boys came out, and Kiefer Sutherland was just showing his variety from being this real dark vampire actor to being this soft-hearted warrior poet with a really strong comedic side.
Well, and I think more than he was less than their voice of reason and is more of the voice of their heart.
Ooh.
Because I think Dick was the voice of reason. He was the voice of law and order. And Billy was chaos.
Yeah, and then you have Chavez, who was the voice of the spirit.
Yeah, for sure.
Again,
we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
And
then Charlie was the voice of fear.
Yeah.
Or Dirty Steve was the voice of fear.
Yeah, Dirty Steve wasn't. He was just dirty.
Navajo.
That ain't right. He ain't all there.
He's there enough to be dancing with a pretty girl while we were sitting over here
pulling our tallywhackers. But what you see and what he says to Young when he breaks into her bedroom there is, you are necessary.
Yes.
You have a purpose. You have a role. You aren't something your worth is more than a shirt.
So good.
And as men, that's part of our role, is to empower the women. And John Eldredge, and as you mentioned, the Outpost, whether it's in Indiana or North Carolina, we talk about the beauties as women, the women in our lives. And to give them value, because the world tries to steal it.
Yes.
Or it assigns it to something that's not really there.
Oh, yeah. Come on. Preach, Paul. That works. No, and that's exactly what happens throughout the show. They're assigning value to a perspective, whether it's self-value, a perceived value, a spoken value, or even a desired value. This whole show is about value. I see value in you. No, there's value in my pals. No, there's value in this gun. No, there's value in what I can do. I can make you famous.
Right.
Yeah, if you kill me, you'll be famous. I mean, that's when you look at this in value. I lost the man that spoke value to me, so I'm going to revenge him.
Right.
So yeah, let's go back to the 1 degrees decisions. All those little decisions create a value, whether explicit or implicit, whether overtly or covertly, we are making the desires of our heart are changing, are setting our values in place. So like with me, I mean, I've woken up before going like, what am I doing? Who am I becoming? This is not what I do. And then to go back and say, God, what I want you to be the value. I want you place the desires of my heart, and to go back to that.
You had mentioned this conversation that you'd had with different people about hearing from God when you recently resigned from your job because you felt like God was calling you to resign.
That was not a stressful situation.
God told you to resign, and a year later you.
No, I yes, absolutely. It's in the field I was at, there was I was praying one night and I felt God say it's time to leave. I got real emotional. When you answer out loud what God puts on your heart, there's something there. And I was like, I don't want to leave. I mean, last year our company had a 47.5% growth. 3 years before that, 40% growth. It's a solid company. It's a good company. I mean, there's a serious FOMO that's happening there because I'm like, what? I don't get it. And then about a month ago, our church up in Fortville, Indiana, Mercy Road Northeast, we launched a new series called Crazy Faith. And the pastor, Ken Primo, says, look to your neighbor and say, are you listening to God? And I looked at my wife and she looks at me and kind of raises an eyebrow. Are you listening to God? And I was like, oh man, this just isn't going away. And
I'm listening. I'm just not doing.
Yeah. Well, and I had put I had put some, there were some issues with our family that we were thinking, well, maybe this is God preparing us to move to Oklahoma. And I've just never had a desire to live in Oklahoma. My wife's from Oklahoma. I mean, I've got family in Oklahoma. Our parents live 30 minutes apart from each other in Oklahoma. So maybe God's wanting to prepare. I feel like I'm going, Oklahoma. In this process, I put some resumes out and got crickets back. The response I get, then when I'm praying about it, God, am I supposed to go to Oklahoma? Nope. We supposed to go to Kansas City? Nope. Are we supposed to leave Indiana? Nope. Oh, that's a lot of no's. Okay. And then what I realized was what I finally got clarity over before I resigned was, I mean, I'm in all out stress mode because I do not want to slow walk God. And delayed obedience is disobedience. And so I'm sitting here thinking to myself, God, and so I'm in church, I'm a wreck. I've got tears coming down. I'm sitting in the back pew at the very back of the auditorium when my wife's there and everybody's standing up singing and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, God, I want to serve you and I want to follow you. And what you're asking, you've asked some crazy things of people throughout the Bible and history. And what you're asking me is not anywhere near what you've asked them. You're not asking me to step out on water, and walk to you on water. You're not asking me to pick up and move to a land that I can't Google on my maps. You're asking me to leave my job without another job lined up. And God, I'm scared. And then that hit me. I'm like, wait a second. I'm not typically a guy that gets scared easy about those things. So what's behind that? I mean, I was confused. Like, okay, why am I scared? And so Mitch Davis from Mission Uprising was like, you just need to go spend 24 hours with God in a cabin somewhere. And so a guy up in Indiana is like, yeah, I got this cabin, He's like, the beds, someone just stayed there. The beds aren't made. I'm like, I don't care about the beds. I just need 24 hours with Jesus. He's like, well, go for it, man. And then let me know how it goes afterwards. And it was amazing because there wasn't any great epiphany, but it was quiet. I was able to steal my heart, listen for the direction, get confirmation on, yes, this is what God wants. Then God wanted me to tell the company I was leaving why I was leaving. And it's really hard to go tell a company, hey, God's asking me to leave. And then everyone's looking at you like you're crazy. And I'm not running away from anything. And I think this is the point you're getting at. I'm not running from a bad situation. I'm not running because I'm angry. I'm actually walking towards where I'm being called.
Well, and I think it was your boss that had said, well, how do you know it's God talking to you?
Yeah, he was like, well, what about the voices in your head? What about when people say, well, the voices told me to do this? I'm like, well, we have a control line. It's a construction term, a control line where you pull all your measurements off of the same line. And with us as Christ followers, it's the Bible. And so if a voice told me, yes, you need to go kill this person, well, the Bible says don't be a murderer. I wouldn't do that.
Right.
So you have to be discerning in what you're being called to do. So it's interesting because you have this moment where in the movie Young Guns, they get lost. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. And the voice of the Spirit speaks.
We've come to a place where we are lost, no? When an Indian is lost, he must reach into the spirit world to find the way. On the spirit road, he'll be shown a sign. This is the way to the spirit road. We're lost right now, but I'll find us the way.
As you mentioned, Chavez is the voice of the Spirit. And I love that idea of we have a control line. You know, if you're building a fence, you put a string up that shows you the line, because if you say, no, I'm just going to put it in line with the previous fence post, well, if that's 1 degree out of alignment, 1 degree out of alignment, 1 degree, and that's a really, really, really small, almost imperceptible shift. However, if you have 100 feet of fence, you're going to be significantly off by the time you get to the corner.
Yeah.
If you're not going off the control line.
Yes.
Like when we cut the risers, it's like we have a sort of, this is the original. Every further one you cut off the original, don't cut it off the one you just cut. Because if that one's a little bit off, the next one's a little bit off, the next one's a little bit off. Now your steps are crooked and wobbly and you got to start all over.
Absolutely. And when I told people I'm leaving because God's asked me to, where are you going? I don't know. What are you going to be doing? Oh, my wife's got a honeydew project list that keeps on growing for stuff to get done around the house. There's also writing that I need to do that God's put on my heart for 20, 30 years. And then my wife goes to Oklahoma for the week. And then I've got this wonderful opportunity for the first time. I've got time to prepare for the outpost. You and I were talking, Paul, and you're like, hey, why don't you just come down early? I'm not going to be able to go. So, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And so what do right before I do all this? I tear out my master bathroom. And it was the worst decision because that's not what God wanted me to do. The simple repairs that I could do, what would take me an hour was taking me all day. And I was so frustrated. And I told it to my wife, and she's like, I was wondering when you sent me pictures of you gutting the bathroom. I'm like, what is he doing?
You should have been resting, getting like just sort of relaxing, filling yourself. And what I love, like, we're not saying you should, go get some peyote to go enter the spirit world.
Or are we? No, we're not saying that. We're not saying that at all.
But what you do need is that quiet, like you found in the cabin.
Yes.
When you are feeling lost. And you're like, well, and it might seem that our podcast seems a little lost at this point because we have a lot of stuff to talk about, so we can really just touch on stuff. We've talked about the beauty to rescue. Mm-hmm. How do we do that? We speak value into their lives. We actually value people.
Yes.
Regardless of what the rest of the world might say. And what is an adventure other than the idea of feeling lost and following God into it?
Oh, yeah.
The adventure is, it doesn't have to be the Wild West because that's relatively unsustainable in our current culture. But adventure is pursuing a life with God, pursuing a life that's motivated out. One of the things Bart Hansen with the Wild at Heart guy says, when you're motivated by love, every day is an adventure.
Oh, yeah. And what's interesting was I called my my investment guy, because I don't know. It's interesting. Since then, I've had some really good interviews and interviews that I would never have taken if God hadn't asked me to step away. But I was fully like, okay, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I guess I'll be living off my 401k for an indefinite, and I'm not ready to retire. Like I said, I'm young at heart. And so I'm not ready to retire. So I'm prepared. And I told my investment guy, Ryan Hayden, I'm like, so I know, Ryan, you probably think I'm crazy like everybody else. He goes, no, I think you're adventurous. And I really liked his definition way better than mine. Because you're only crazy until you're not. Until, oh, wow, you mean I wouldn't have had this opportunity if I hadn't opened myself to where God was leading me? Oh, wow, here I am. I'm not running away from anything. Because that's in the second movie, all they're doing is running away from the bad guys.
Yeah.
And the enemy chases you.
Who are technically the good guys.
Because they're bad guys. Yeah, it's all
because they've murdered people.
They have.
Like, it's interesting how we sort of glorify Billy the Kid and Doc Holliday into mixed movies a little bit, but these Western is sort of like we do with the pirates.
Yes.
Like, pirates were not good people.
No.
But we glorify that pirate lifestyle. We glorify the outlaw lifestyle.
Yep.
Because it looks like adventure.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it.
But there's no control line. There's no, it's all lawless.
You just went full circle there, man.
That's what I do.
That's awesome. I love that. I love you. No, you're absolutely right, because you're going from justifying your actions versus, and that's one of the things that dawned on me too with that cabin was, one of the things that I realized was I keep going places expecting God to bless me versus saying, no, God, where do you want me to go? And follow him. You know, if we really believe what we believe, if we really believe in the God of the Bible, think about how much confidence and strength that should give us. But at the same time, there's also an enemy that's very real who is unrelenting. The enemy found the young guns in their very spots and went after them, pulled them out. They were no longer safe.
Yeah.
So I don't want to over spiritualize that aspect, but I think that there is something to that. So but again, the value, the question that I kept asking myself was like, wow, this guy's valuing this guy. This girl's valuing this. This person's valuing that, even Charlie at the end of it starts to value like, oh man,
I've got a wife.
What am I doing? I can't just, and then Billy's like, Charlie, you got to stand up and fight. You got to fight so you can get to your wife. You can't just sit there. You will die. And I was really, I kind of caught myself going, wow, that's good stuff. You've got to stand up and fight. You're in a corner. You can't just sit there and be cower in fear.
Yeah.
But fighting does not necessarily mean picking up a gun. It means, what are you going towards? What is your direction you're moving towards? I think that within itself is the value. Like, what value are you placing?
Right.
You know?
Because for Billy, it was fame.
Yes.
And justice. Like, he wanted justice for his mentor, his father figure there.
But he had gotten that a long time ago. In the first movie.
Right. Right. At the very end, when he kills Murphy.
Yeah.
Who is the one behind it all. But yet he still...
Which was the longest awkward death scene.
Right. But and it's interesting at the end of the second, when Pat Garrett catches up with him in that little town, and Pat's like, I gave you every chance to go south, to go to Old Mexico, to get out of the reach of the law.
Oh.
I gave you every opportunity. And Billy's like, that's not a life. I'd just be another gringo down there. I'd just be one of a million when I got to be a one of one.
Yeah.
And that's with these stories, there's always, with a well sort of done story, and I'm not saying this was an extremely well done screenplay or anything like that. It was great. It was memorable. Fun. It was fun. But you've got, just very similar to Breaking Bad, you've got the conscious desire of justice for John Tunstall.
Yes.
You've got the unconscious desire that we all see, but he doesn't recognize as, I need to be famous. And how famous is famous enough? Just a little bit more for Billy.
Well, wow. I mean, you talk about that, like how much is enough?
Right.
If it's always just a little bit more, I mean.
How much security is enough? How many door locks? How many guns do you need? I have a friend who's like, I have 9 guns in my house. Like, that seems like overkill.
I know guys that have a lot more than that.
I know, but he's like, everything is, there's a, if you like Kevin Hart and he talks about he got robbed, and then he talks about placing guns around his house. So he's like, I spent like 3 hours trying to imagine, where might I get robbed, and then hiding his guns there. And it's, language is rough because, it's Kevin Hart, but oh my gosh, my son showed it to me over Christmas break and we were dying laughing about, let me just check my mail one last time.
The other thing too is that the idea of where do we go, hunted by evil. Enemy can't own us. And then at the end, okay, this is what I was going to. Yeah, the pals. Because at the very end of Young Guns 2, Billy the Kid is alone.
Mm-hmm.
Because of his decisions, he's lost everybody, including, he's still famous. The biggest thing he ever wanted to be was famous. Everyone knows about Billy the Kid, the famed outlaw.
Yeah.
But he's alone, and he's living with regret and shame.
Right. And even in that, even at the end of Young Guns 2, we see him turn to the woman to take strength. He goes to her because he's alone, because he feels lost. He doesn't have Chavez. He doesn't have Doc. He doesn't have his heart, doesn't have his soul. And so he turns, as again, many men do, turn to the women to take comfort, to receive, to not offer strength in who he was. And she actually ends up betraying him anyway, because I guess she'd gotten paid off by Pat Garrett. But again, you go back to the first one, and Chavez is trying to leave because he's like, look, in my spirit world trip, I was told to go west because following you is the way of blood. And I don't want to do that. And Billy manipulates him.
Yep.
Because that's what narcissists do. Because he says, oh, John Tunstall's death doesn't matter. And Chavez talks about the loss of his tribe and how he's the last one. And then Billy, as Chavez is trying to leave, trying to take Charlie with him, he sort of pulls that last card of that idea of pals, which we realize at the end of his life was just another way to manipulate people to get what he wants.
Everybody on my reservation was butchered, and it means nothing to me! Oh, yeah. Yeah, I went to Lincoln to take Murphy's head. And that's when John Tunstall found me. And he took me in. And he taught me a better way to bury Murphy.
Murphy buried him the old Irish way, Chavez.
That's right, Steve. And he starved out your family, Chavez. And now he's doing it to every small farmer in the territory.
Uh-huh.
But you want to run, go ahead. Just go right on ahead. Bye. You got no loyalty, Navajo.
Navajo.
Ain't nothing but a piece of chicken shit in the rain.
No. We had our ceremony back there on the ridge, Chivato. Now, I don't know what your vision told you, but my vision told me we're headed for blood. Blood like a river. I'm the last of my clan. The last of my people. If I die, and I'm not afraid of dying, Chivato, the sacred hoop is broken. Now I have to go west and make my people live again. Charlie, you come with me?
You ain't saying much, Dirty Steve. 'Cause you ain't got much to say, Charlie. Oh, Steve understands the meaning of the word pals, don't you, Steve? So you got 3 or 4 good pals, well, then you got yourself a tribe. There ain't nothing stronger than that. We're your family now, Chavez. You walk away from us, you break our sacred hoop. We gotta stick together, fellas. It's the only way I see it.
I mean, how good is that?
And again, as a 17-year-old,
Oh, yeah.
that's what you feel. He's like, I want to belong with a group of guys that we are that tied together. We're going to fight together. We're going to adventure together. We're going to do stuff together. And we're going to become our own family. We're going to become our own tribe.
But think about it. What the voice of the Spirit said was, I've seen the future, and it's a river of blood. That's why I'm going to go west, because I have to, and I'm not afraid of dying. He's not. I mean, even in Young Guns too. I mean, he
Takes the knife through the forearm.
yeah. Yeah, and didn't even blink an eye.
You want your knife back?
Yeah. So he's very brave, very loyal, but the voice of Spirit. And then what does he do? He calls Charlie, who is already starting to look at value differently. He's already changing. It's funny, all the characters, their arcs change except for Billy. He is consistent through the entire both movies. The same character. He never grows.
Yeah. And you flip it, right? If Billy really cared about being pals,
he'd go with Chavez.
They would go west. They would go out to California.
You're right. I care about my pals. I don't want them to die. And you know what? We've already finished this job. We've already done this. Part of me carrying on John Tunson's legacy is taking you misfits, you brothers now, you pals, and let's keep this going. Let's take this pal thing and make it generational. But no, you don't get famous that way.
Right.
I mean,
you can't disappear into the desert.
Yeah. Whoever got famous by being normal.
Yeah.
No.
And what we see Billy do is, like I said, very manipulative in this scene, but because it speaks to something. We want buddies. We want pals. We want to be a part of a tribe. And that even goes back to the very beginning with Tunstall. He brought them into the regulators were their tribe. And I think Dick would have kept them together. He would have been that leader sort of father role. He got pissed because everybody kept calling it Billy's gang. He's like, I'm the leader. As he was sort of, as Billy was seeking that upper hand and looking to be the famous one, he didn't even care about leading. He just wanted to be famous.
Correct.
But what you do is, as Dan Allender says, you find like-hearted kings moving in the same direction. You find men with the same battle to fight.
You find those like-hearted kings, you build alliances, and then you go to battle.
Yeah.
So like when you ask me like, why is this movie so good? Because there's moments where like, should we even look at this movie? Because a 17-year-old boy, the idea of pals and the idea of being a band of brothers and then looking back 30 something years and saying, oh man, I have friends that I remember doing that with, that I still care about. I still pray for Jeff and Danny and Jerry. And, I've been blessed to catch up with most of those guys. And even got a text message exchange today from the first guy I ever baptized. And we haven't talked in years. And so looking forward to catching up with him probably on Sunday. So I care about those pals in my life. But where I'm at now, my tribe, my wife, my children, my oldest son, my tribe is bigger than that. It's also bigger than my two brothers and two sisters and nieces and nephews and my sisters and brothers-in-laws. And I mean, we're going up this weekend to North Carolina, the Carolina Outpost, where there's going to be over 150 men. Those are my brothers. Tribe has gotten bigger because we all share the same father.
Mm-hmm.
We all have the bigger mission. Indiana Outpost is growing again. We're up, and when I go up there, I've got more brothers up there and guys who would jump in a foxhole with me, and I would jump in a foxhole with them at any time. And then you look at their wives. So when you look at who we are as children of God, sons of God, it's really a big family. You don't have to be alone. And I think that's the tragedy of this arc that Billy the Kid's on. He dies alone. And according to that old lady I met in Hico, Texas, he couldn't even ride a horse or shoot a gun.
Right. And yeah, I love that. And because we think we have to find the pals.
Right.
Before we find the battle or the adventure. But I think if we pursue the adventure and the battle that God's given to us, then the pals will show up because they're heading in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we saw in episode 2 of Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
How Winters was there behind enemy lines, and as he moves towards his objective, other men gather up, and what was Winters and one other guy become a whole company. So, Matt, thanks for texting me the random text out of nowhere on your way down here, Young Guns.
Thanks for accepting my random text out of nowhere.
What is accepting? It's not a... I don't have a choice. It just... Bing!
The fact that you called me means you accepted.
That's right. It's like, well, you're coming down here. Why don't we watch the movies and then record a podcast?
Yeah, and it was fun. I really enjoyed it and enjoyed getting to know your tribe more, your wife and your daughter and your grandson. who is going to grow up and be a comedian one day. He's hilarious. And I look forward to you guys come up to Indiana and hang out with us, my tribe.
Yeah, man. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So this has been Paul McDonald and Matt Gleaves talking about Young Guns and Young Guns 2. We just merged them together because we can do that. It's my podcast. I can do what I want. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Oh, Bob! Goodbye, Bob. Best dollar radio I ever spent.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?